Hey guys, Billy here with an updated Fire Mage guide for patch 9.05, mostly aimed towards Mythic Plus. If you have any questions on what I'm going to be covering, be sure to check the description down below for sections and timestamps. So let's get started. For talents, you're going to pretty much always be taking the same thing you always do. The only two rows you can change are the level 40 row, and you can take whichever utility that you best need. For me, I take Frenetic Speed in Raiding and Ring of Frost in Mythic Plus. And the other row is Flame Patch versus Conflagration. Conflagration is like a pure single target talent, which means you never cast a Flamestrike, which is mostly in raid. Flame Patch is for all those scenarios where you do cast a Flamestrike, which is, Mythic Plus, certain bosses like Mythic Stone Legion, Mythic Sun King, for example. So at the moment, Night Fae is by far the best covenant for Fire Mages, which means we get these three covenants: Naya, Dreamweaver, and Karain. In terms of single target, I think Karain is the best one, followed by Naya, and then Dreamweaver last place. In terms of AoE, I think that Karain and Dreamweaver are pretty evenly matched. I think Dreamweaver has a bit more realistic AoE because of the way that Karain's buff works in Mythic Plus. I think last place Naya is a bit behind in AoE. However, in Mythic Plus, you want to try to get the best of both worlds. And that medium is Karain. He offers the best AoE and the best single target, so that's why myself and a lot of other mages are taking Karain. However, that doesn't mean that these other two are not viable to run. In certain scenarios, they can perform better, but consistently, Karain is the best performing one. For your conduits, you will always go double potency as fire. Infernal Cascade is a conduit that you will always take no matter what. The second conduit you will take 90% of the time is Discipline of the Grove. It is a conduit that reduces your cooldown, so it helps your combustion cooldown. It also helps your fire blast cooldown, and it's a conduit that translates well in single target and in AoE versus the Pyroblast conduit or the Flamestrike conduit, which are pure single target or pure AoE. So new to 9.05, the Disciplinary Command legendary got buffed by 5%, the crit damage part. And it is simming better than our previous BIS, which was Fevered Incantation. So I know this legendary sucks to use, and I agree, but it is performing better, and unless they nerf it, it's going to be our best in slot. I will make a section on how to use it later in the video. In terms of what slot to craft the legendary on, I would do whatever is a bigger upgrade for you. I simmed myself and the ring was higher in most scenarios, so I just followed my sim. However, it is completely acceptable to craft it in either slot. I did haste verse on mine because it translates well to every type of scenario. However, if you wanted to min-max your stats for raid a little bit, you could do haste crit or haste mastery depending on your current stats. Now when it comes to stats for AoE, it's a bit more simple. Haste and verse reign very dominant, and crit and mastery following right behind. With respect to item level, of course. Having around 26 to 20% haste is very ideal for Mythic Plus. And after that, you will look to stack versatility and a little bit of crit. For raid and single target, it gets a bit trickier. You want to stack haste to a certain percent and then get other stats, but not versatility. This is where it's tricky because versatility is very common on PvP gear, as well as a very good AoE stat. But after you stack your haste, you want to look to stack crit and mastery. When I sim myself, I use the add-on SimC, and in-game, I type /SimC and copy-paste this over to raidbots.com. In raidbots.com, you can sim yourself in various different ways. When you get here, input the code you copy-pasted into here. If you scroll to the bottom, right here, you can edit the way your character sims. You can add targets and change the duration of the fight, as well as turn off Bloodlust. And this is how I sim my character. When I sim AoE, I add targets and reduce the duration of the fight. And I also turn off Bloodlust. When I sim single target, I turn on Bloodlust and I sim for a longer duration with one target. For Trinkets, you will 99% of the time equip your PvP badge no matter the item level. And for raid, our best trinket is Soul Igniter by a fair amount, with Kabbalist Hymnal as the best alternative. For Mythic Plus, the PvP haste proc trinket is the best one, followed by Unbound Changeling and Kabbalist Hymnal. For consumables, always use Spectral Potion of Intellect on your combustions. Unless your potion is needed for a specific push, just make sure you use it on cooldown with combustion. For gems and enchants, it really depends on your gear. For me, everything goes to mastery and raid because I have enough haste. If you have low haste, definitely sim yourself and see what's up. In Mythic Plus, I put on haste gems till around 27% and go full verse. For racial abilities, the best known ones for Horde are Troll and Orc. Now the reason I think Troll is slightly better is because I believe it has a bit more AoE value with the haste racial. And for Alliance, the Mecha Gnome main stat keeps simming higher than the rest, with both of the Dwarf races and Void Elf right behind it. Now, on to some basics. Fire Mage is a spec where getting 2 crits in a row creates Hot Streak, which makes Flamestrike and Pyroblast both instant casts. These act as your AoE and your single target spenders. These 5 spells all contribute towards Hot Streak. Your goal is to get enough crits with these abilities to spam Flamestrike on AoE or Pyroblast on single target. Remember, you have to get 2 crits in a row to get the Hot Streak. If you crit once and the second spell doesn't crit, then the crit is wasted and you have to get 2 crits again. This is why Pyroblast is important, is because you can use it while you're casting a fireball and it always crits. So while you're casting your spells, you can use it to assure the second crit, as I do here. The most important part of Mage is of course Combustion. Fire Mage is a class where you don't do great damage outside of your Combustion cooldown, but you do great damage inside of it. So mastering and becoming comfortable with it is hugely beneficial. So here I'll have a quick segment on Disciplinary Command and how to use it. In order to proc it, you must cast a spell with all 3 schools of magic within 10 seconds of each other. And when you're successful, you get the buff for 20 seconds. And this buff can only be procced once every 30 seconds. So this means you can fit in a proc in between combustion if you use it instantly on CD. Now, before I jump into which spells you use to proc it, I want to remind you that using Disciplinary Command on cooldown in between combustion is barely a 0.5% increase. It is actually worse if you proc it too late and have to wait for the proc for your next combustion. So in most scenarios, when you combust on CD and with high raid movement, you can just dedicate 1 proc to each combustion and it will be fine. These spells below are the most notable spells to proc it. As a Fire Mage, you don't really have to worry about proccing the fire part because we're spamming fire spells anyways. For arcane spells, we have a lot of various different off-the-global spells to use. The most notable is Rune of Power dropped from Combustion. When you press Combust, the rune and the combustion itself will both count as a fire and arcane spell, meaning you only have to do a frost spell to activate it. This makes it a bit more simple because you don't have to worry about the arcane spell, just a frost spell. The best spell to use outside of combat or on high movement is Frost Nova. So if your raid leader does a countdown, you will likely be Frost Novaing about 6 seconds before the pull. Get the frost spell out of the way so that you can just press combustion and go on with your day. When in actual combat, using a frost spell is better than Nova because it does more damage and also because the proc doesn't start till the end of the frost spell cast, where Frost Nova, it starts the instant you press it. Most of the time in Mythic Plus, I just use Frost Nova. If I didn't have Frost Nova, then I would use a Frost Bolt. But in raid, in single target, you should use Frost Bolt. If you are looking to proc it in between combustion, then you can use spells such as, Frost Bolt, Nova, of course, and Counterspell and Shimmer are pretty noticeable abilities because they're off the GCD. If you don't have either of those on cooldown, then Arcane Explosion is fine too. However, if you proc it too late and have to sit on your combustion CD to wait for your proc to come back, it is a loss, so it is better to play safe if you don't proc it instantly. So for our single target opener, it has remained the same the entire expansion, but here is a timeline of what it looks like. One starts without a heating up, and one starts with a heating up. If you are doing a DVM countdown, you will Frost Nova roughly 6 seconds before the pull to get your Disciplinary Command ready to proc. Precast Pyroblast between 4 to 5 seconds on the pull timer, and use in your potion, racial ability, and your on-use trinket, which is typically a gladiator badge. One side note is that if you're in Mythic Plus and you're just opening, you don't have time to precast Pyro. So do the same thing here, just delete the precast Pyro from the chart. So this is what the opener looks like in real time. You will Frost Nova before the pull starts, and you'll hardcast Pyroblast. After the Pyroblast, you will hit your trinket, potion, and racial. And after that, you'll cast Fireball, and you'll press Combust and 2 Fire Blast. The 2 Fire Blast will give you 1 Pyro, and the Fireball and the Pyro will crit, giving you the second Pyroblast. And after that, it gets pretty standard, where you just chain Phoenix Flames and Fire Blast back to back, as you can see in the top. If your precast crits, then you'll simply just use 1 Fire Blast during the Fireball, and then do 1 more Fire Blast Pyro to get your second stack Inferno Cascade. After that, you will proceed normally with Phoenix Flames and Pyroblast chaining. So with Bloodlust, your opener can change a little bit, and I'll show you how. In this clip, I have Bloodlust and open normally, and right when I refresh my Infernal Cascade, you can go for a Phoenix Flames, Pyro, Phoenix Flames. So right here, Phoenix Flames, Pyro, Phoenix Flames, and right here, after I send this Pyro right here, I will refresh my Blaster Master. I will cast Fire Blast to refresh it, and I will Scorch and spam Pyroblast, and it'll give me a double Pyroblast. Doing 2 Phoenix Flames is only possible if you have a lot of haste, which typically comes from Bloodlust. After your combust, you will typically use Rune of Power and Shifting Power instantly. And try your best not to cap Fire Blast while you spam Fireballs and use Fire Blast to complete heating ups. If you cap on Fire Blast, you can use 2 Fire Blasts in a row to force a Pyroblast just to keep the CD of Fire Blast rolling. Also, if you are combusting on CD on pure single target, you can just save all Phoenix Flames strictly for combust. At around 25 seconds left on combust, you want to make sure you are properly holding your Fire Blast so that your next combust has its full force. This means holding Fire Blasts if you get crits and wasting some heating ups in the process. When it's time to combust, send a Frostbolt and proceed. One thing to mention is the double Fire Blast opener that I presented you with is only possible if you have full Fire Blasts, or really high haste like Bloodlust. So if you combust with 2 Fire Blasts and not 3, you have to play differently and rotate Fire Blasts and Phoenix Flames earlier on, rather than instantly throwing 2 Fire Blasts, or you might drop your Infernal Cascade. Whatever way you open, just know that keeping Infernal Cascade up is the top priority. This is an example of starting combust with only 2 Fire Blasts. AoE, there are 2 ways to open, with a precasted Flamestrike or without a precasted Flamestrike. The precasted opener seems to be the most damage, so if you're able to do it without getting griefed by mechanics, then it's good. And you could open with or without a crit. Now this is an example of an AoE opener with no crit. You'll Frost Nova to get your Disciplinary Command out of the way. You'll Trinket, precast the Flamestrike, combust 2 Fire Blasts, Flamestrike again, Phoenix Flames Fire Blast Flamestrike, Shifting Power, 2 Fire Blasts, Flamestrike again, then Phoenix Flames Fire Blast Flamestrike, and then just spam whatever you have left. If you have a crit or a heating up, you will do the same thing, except you will only use 1 Fire Blast on the precasted Flamestrike. Now, say it's a very heavy movement fight, or there's Quaking Volcanic Storming to dodge, or just a lot of stuff to dodge in general, and you don't have time to precast the Flamestrike. In this scenario, it's better to just get your damage out than have your Flamestrike get cancelled or quaked. In that case, I'd open like this. With no crit, I would instantly open with Combust, Phoenix Flames, Fire Blast, Flamestrike. Double Fire Blast, Flamestrike, then Shifting Power, but do a Fire Blast and a Phoenix Flames. And this reason is so that we can delay our Fire Blast to the further end of our combustion to have the Infernal Cascade buff linger around. With a crit, I would instantly open with Combust, Fire Blast, Flamestrike, Phoenix Flames, Fire Blast, Flamestrike, Shifting Power, double Fire Blast, Flamestrike, and then chain Phoenix Flames, Fire Blast, Flamestrike till the end. Special note, if you have absolutely nothing else to cast at the end of your combustion, Dragon's Breath is a great button to press if you have nothing because it does not have a cast time. Outside of Combust on AoE, your goal is to pump out as many Flame Strikes as possible. Hard casting Flame Strike without an instant proc is damage efficient, so your rotation is to just be hard casting Flame Strike, keeping Phoenix Flames and Fire Blast on cooldown, generate instant Flame Strikes in between your hard casted ones. If your target is below 30%, you benefit from Searing Touch, which means you start to use Scorch to generate your Flame Strikes. The second you see any mob in Mythic Plus below 30%, you are looking to Scorch Flamestrike. If you catch yourself combusting without Shifting Power, the main rule is to make sure you keep up Infernal Cascade, spam all of your instant casts within the combust, even if you have to Scorch at the end. Rune of Power should be used in coordination with a lot of hard-casted Flamestrikes, or Scorch Flamestrikes. You are safe to just use it on pull when you have full Fire Blast and plan to hardcast a lot. Dragon's Breath is a very efficient damage spell. However, it is one of our most important utilities as an AoE disorient. In Mythic Plus, I mostly use Dragon's Breath as a movement global, or if I need to disorient a specific cast. In terms of when to Flamestrike and when to Pyroblast, if you are combusting 1 to 2 targets, you will act like it is single target. When you get to 3 targets, you start Flamestrike AoEing in Combust. If you want priority damage, you can single target at any amount of targets. Without Combust, as low as 2 targets, you start doing your Flamestrike rotation. Hard casting as well. If the mobs are moving a lot and being kited, you can just single target. Single targeting is also efficient if your Combust is coming up very soon, want to try to rush it back with single target crits. So here's a quick segment on how to use Soul Igniter. Currently, this trinket is our best in slot in raid and single target. There are 2 unique things about it. One is that if you use an on-use trinket, for example the Gladiator's badge, then hit Soul Igniter specifically after, it lets you use both. And the other is that it is fire damage, so it gets buffed by Infernal Cascade. Pressing Soul Igniter again releases the damage, but in the past there have been bugs that it wouldn't let you release it when you want. Because of this, I'd recommend making a cancel aura button somewhere in your keys to have a 100% success rate. For me, I implemented it into my Living Bomb button because Living Bomb is never used in PvE, and Soul Igniter is never used in PvP. So whichever way you do it, make sure you are comfortable. The cooldown of Soul Igniter does not start until it is released or cancel aura'd. Because of this, we release it the instant that we get 2 stacks of Infernal Cascade. The reason being is that if you wait too long to release it, it starts to desync from your combustion, and we absolutely want to be combusting every minute on cooldown. You don't want to have combust up and Soul Igniter not be up. That being said, if it is the last combust of a fight, or you know for whatever reason you are holding combust, milking the duration out is good. So when you open, you want to make sure you press your badge and then your Soul Igniter right after. Do your Fireball combust 2 Fire Blasts to get the Infernal Cascade to 2, then hit your Cancel Aura to release it. You can macro badge and Soul Igniter together as long as Soul Igniter is specifically after badge. You will do this for every combust, cancelling it relatively quickly so that it lines up with future combusts. I personally have 2 separate buttons dedicated to activating and cancelling it, but macroing it to whatever works as long as it's comfortable and consistent to you. There are 3 main macros that I find to be helpful to fire mages. The first one is the simple Flamestrike cursor macro, which lets you escape the green circle of placing your Flamestrike. Instead, just Flamestriking wherever your cursor currently is. If you sometimes lose your cursor in combat because it disappears when you right click, I will include a weak aura in my description down below that puts a white circle to wherever your cursor is. It helps me a lot personally. I have this macro for the times when I precast into Combust. If you combust mid-cast, your trinkets and ratials don't go off. So Fireball Combust Opener and the Precast Flamestrike Opener, I press this button before that precast, so I don't have to worry about my trinket racial not going off in Combust. This is my Combust macro, and it's mainly for if I don't precast or if I want to make sure my racials and trinkets go off. I have incorporated all and any trinkets and racials I would use in Combust into this macro. But it is mainly for if I'm not precasting and I just want to hit combustion and start going. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this video has helped you in any way, because that is my goal. I will be leaving some add-ons, weak auras, and resources that I have mentioned in my video down below. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments, in Discord, or at my Twitch at twitch.tv/Asuna_cutie. See you guys next time.